Hello, I'm Dr. Hassaan Tohid once again with an outstanding topic, the basics of clinical trials. Basics of clinical trials. Before you embark on a journey to conduct your own clinical trial, to do your own clinical research, to do your own clinical study, you must understand the basics. What is the concept? What is the basic idea behind clinical trials? So let's begin. Let's talk about this. So what is a clinical trial? Clinical trial is a study design. It is one of the study designs of research. In clinical trials, you check the safety or effectiveness of a medication. This is what a clinical trial is, and it is one of the study designs on the study design pyramid. I have discussed that before, that on the study design pyramid, we have different kinds of study designs. That means in the research world, we only have limited kinds of study designs. If you want to do any kind of research, you just look at the study design pyramid and you will understand what are the options you have, and you choose one of the study designs. Similarly, if you are doing a clinical trial, you now know that on the study design pyramid, it's the second best evidence in the world. So this is what a clinical trial is. It's one of the strongest pieces of evidence. Now, you are planning to do a clinical trial, let's say. So what do? You check the safety and effectiveness of a medication or a treatment, or it could be a diagnostic tool, or it could be a surgical procedure. So it doesn't always have to be a medication. The biggest misconception many people have, especially the new students, especially the new researchers have, that they believe that clinical trials are only related to medication. No, not always. It doesn't have to be a pill. It doesn't have to be an injection, IV drug all the time. It can be anything. So remember that. It could be a drug, it could be a vaccine, it could be a diagnostic tool, it could be a surgical procedure. And anytime you give something to the patient or you ask the patient to do something, it is also an intervention. So it doesn't have to be a medication. It can be any intervention. That is the thing to remember. If you ask a patient to drink water in an experiment and you look at the after effects of that water, then it is an experiment. It is a clinical trial. It is an interventional study. So it could be just a glass of water that you give to the patient. It doesn't have to be a drug or a medication. If you ask the patient to do some exercise, and if you look at the after effects of exercise on his body, it is also a clinical trial. So clinical trial is whenever there is an intervention involved, whenever there is manipulation involved. So this is something very important that everyone must understand. Anytime a scientist manipulates the environment, it becomes an experiment or a clinical trial or an interventional study. And remember, all three are the same thing. Clinical trial is also known as interventional study. Clinical trial is also known as experiment or experimental study. And we have another famous name, that is the clinical trial. So they are one and the same thing. So how do you identify if the research that you are being a part of, or you see somebody else doing research, if it's an experiment or if it's any other kind of study design? Just see if the researcher is manipulating the environment. Is he giving something to the patient? Is he asking the patient to do something and looking at the effects of that instruction, or something that he gave to the patient, he's looking at the after effects of that particular thing? Then this is a clinical trial or experiment or interventional study, because he's doing an intervention. This manipulation is an intervention. So this is what a clinical trial is. So now we understand the basic idea of clinical trial. Now, who will do a clinical trial? You will do a clinical trial. If you are a researcher, if you are a new researcher, research assistant, research coordinator, then you will be a part of the team that is conducting a clinical trial. Of course, who will be the lead person? It will be the principal investigator of your research, the PI, principal investigator. That will be your boss, your supervisor, the most experienced professor probably in the lab. He will be the lead person. He will be the principal investigator, and he does the clinical trial. And you possibly are his volunteer employee, or you are just a volunteer team member, or you are a paid employee, whatever your designation is. You are the part of the team, and he is the principal investigator. So that's the team that conducts the clinical trial. Now, why do they do the clinical trial? As I already discussed, to check the safety and effectiveness of a treatment or diagnostic tool or a surgical procedure. In broader sense, you can say management or treatment. Now, this principal investigator, he cannot start a clinical trial right away. Let's say I'm a principal investigator and I want to start my own project. I have an idea of developing a drug or a medication. So what I will do, I will first write a grant application. A grant application, I will send it to funding sources like NIH, National Institute of Health or some private organizations who can be the funding sources. So I write the grant letter to those organizations. Once I write the grant letter to those organizations, if they accept my grant, they will send me the money. They will send me the grant. They will issue the grant, and I can now start my clinical trial because now I have the money. So I can hire team members, I can hire the apparatus, I can hire the computer, the stuff, whatever is needed. That is why I need funding. So let's say I'm starting a project. I'm trying to discover a medication for depression, for major depression, and now I have an idea. So I wrote a grant, and this grant is sent to NIH or a funding organization, for funding authority. And let's say I'm lucky and they accepted my grant. So I'm very happy. I say, wow, very good. Congratulations, everyone. I got the grant. Let's start the project. I have the money and I'm all set. So I have the idea. Now I will start producing or creating this medication. And our team now develops this medication. Let's say there is a medication. Now I have discovered this medication, and it is another drug for major depression. Now we have another most common medication, the standard treatment in the market. Let's say fluoxetine. That is the most common one, right? Or let's say escitalopram. Okay. So we have the market drug escitalopram or fluoxetine, and we have the drug that we just discovered in the lab, and we named it as XYZ medication. Let's, for the sake of discussion, we named it as XYZ medication. So I have XYZ medication I have discovered with my team in the lab, and we already know that there are so many medications in the market. So now we want to test this drug with, let's say, fluoxetine. So what will we do? Okay, let's take escitalopram. Many people will argue that no, I like escitalopram. Okay, let's take escitalopram as an example. Let's say I have a medication I have discovered in the lab with my team, and we have escitalopram in the market. So now what do? Now we will start our project, our clinical trial. How do we do it? We will involve some patients. They could be volunteers, or we pay them to be the participants in our research. So we will take some patients who are depression patients. Let's say we got 1,000 patients. That's a lot of number. It's a huge number. Let's just, for the sake of discussion, let's say we have 1,000 patients. Okay, 100 patients. So we got 100 patients of depression who are taking escitalopram, and they are between the ages of 30 to 50, male and female both. So what am I doing here? I'm setting an eligibility criteria. Yes, we will set an eligibility criteria that we need to see those patients who are between the ages 30 and 50, and they are either male or female, and they are taking escitalopram. Now we get 100 more patients who also take any medication, but now they are not taking escitalopram. We will give them our medication. So now we have two groups. Now how many groups do we have? We have two groups. One who is taking escitalopram, the market drug. The second one is the group that will get our XYZ medication. So this group that will get our XYZ medication is known as the treatment group. And this group that is getting the escitalopram already, the market drug, we will name this group as a control group. Or we can have another group instead. We just give them a placebo medication, placebo drug. What is a placebo drug? I think everyone knows what is a placebo drug. If you don't, then let me still tell you what is a placebo medication. It just looks like the same medication XYZ that I have developed, but it has no effect. It's simply a sugar pill. So we will give them 100 people the sugar pill, and 100 people that we have, they will get our medication. So this is how we have divided into two groups. So remember, this control group can either get placebo or they can get market drug, standard treatment drug. We usually call it as standard treatment in the clinical trial terminology, not the market drug. So standard treatment or placebo treatment, placebo drug, or we give them no drug at all. So either they are not getting any medication, or they are getting the placebo pill, or they are getting the standard treatment, escitalopram. This one is only getting XY. So now we will give them the medication, and then we will see. Now, if you are doing this clinical trial in the US, then you will have those 4 phases, the famous 4 phases, and I'll discuss that, and I will discuss that later in one of the videos. The phases need more attention, and it needs its own video, so I can explain what those phases are. We will discuss that in one of the future videos. But for now, just stay with me that in other parts of the world, in India, in Pakistan, Egypt, Bangladesh, China, France, if you are in any other country, you may not have those phases, because this phases system is used to get the FDA approval, the Food and Drug Administration approval in the US. You cannot use a medication officially as a treatment until and unless it is accepted by FDA. So that is why a clinical trial is done in the US. In any other part of the world, you can do it. In some countries, they have organizations like FDA, they get the approval, but in some countries, they don't have anything. So just a clinical trial is conducted, depending upon which country you belong to. However, we are right now focused on the US, the way things work in the US. So it could be the 4 phases, and each phase can become its own trial. So let's say, for the sake of discussion, that now clinical trial has begun. We have the treatment group and we have the control group. They are taking placebo and they are taking the XYZ medication that we have discovered. Now we will monitor them. We give them the medication. But before that, we need to have them sign a consent form. They will be a participant of research, so they sign a consent form. And also, we need to do the blinding. You know what is blinding? Blinding means that the patients don't know that they are in this group or this group. Are they getting the XYZ medication or are they getting placebo? Are they getting XYZ medication or are they getting the market treatment? They don't know. So this is what blinding is all about. And why do we do blinding? We do blinding to reduce the chances of bias. So this is single blinding if the patients don't know which group they belong to. But what is double blinding? If me, myself, the researcher doesn't know which medication is given to which group. So that is double blinding. But remember, we always first do a process known as randomization. Before dividing these people into two groups, the treatment group and the control group, we must do randomization in order to make our study stronger, the evidence better, to avoid bias. How do we do randomization? By computer. Let's say we have 200 patients, right? Let's start from the beginning. Let's say we have 200 patients. So I have 200 patients. 100 will be given the standard treatment or placebo and 100 will be given the XYZ. So who will be given the XYZ treatment and who will be given the standard treatment of placebo or no treatment? Computer will decide. Let the computer decide. And once you have decided that, that's called randomization. So you have avoided one chance of bias. That's very good. But you still need to make sure that you do blinding, that the researchers and the patients both don't know who is getting what medication. And if you are successfully able to do that, then you have avoided the chances of bias. You have reduced the risk of bias. I won't say that there will be no bias. There can still be bias, but you reduce the risk of bias. And then you look at the after effects of this XYZ medication on these patients and the placebo on these patients. And now you have the results. You understand what happened. Is this XYZ medication safe and effective in comparison to escitalopram, let's say? If you notice that they are getting better faster and they improve more, then this is a successful clinical trial. And this could be just a phase 1. The phase 1 trial is over, then you jump to phase 2, then you get to phase 3, and then the treatment is officially given to the population, the public. And then during the phase 4, you just see that when the consumers, the patients are using it in the country, what is the result? How effective is the medication? How safe is the medication? So actually, the real phases are the first 3 phases. The 4th phase is just after the drug is approved by FDA and you just look at what is happening. So the FDA part is only in the US, as I said, and in any other part of the world, you don't need these 4 phases, especially in countries, in Middle Eastern countries, South Asian countries, India, Pakistan, you don't need those kind of 4 phases. I don't know how is the system right now in those countries. If there is any, then please do comment below and let me know. What is the system right now in your country that is actually related to our 4 phases system in the US? And what is the organization that you have like FDA in your country? Please do comment below and improve my knowledge as well. I want to learn and know what is happening in your country so I can later on research more and study more and create a video according to your country's style of clinical trial. But right now this video was according to the US style of clinical trial. I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned a lot from this video, and I will quickly give a recap of this video. A clinical trial is a study design and it's a clinical research in which patients are involved, and you call it interventional study or you call it as an experiment. You check the effectiveness and safety of a medication or treatment or a diagnostic modality or surgical procedure, and you do the randomization. And when do you do randomization? You divide the population, the patients, into 2 groups, the treatment group and the control group, and then you do the blinding. You do single blinding or the double blinding, and once you do that, you avoid bias, and that's how you complete your clinical trial. If you are in the US, you will have to go through those 4 phases. If you are in any other country, you may go to the phases that are usually prevalent in your country. So I hope you enjoyed this video and you liked it. If you have any comments below, please do type and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you have any questions, please do type as well and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you. Keep learning. Keep watching.